You can't understand all the tips the pros give until you do it yourself. This is what I've learned from making 5 manga chapters. There's a lot of things I feel I should have done before dropping these chapters, but these are things I came to know in hindsight. Likewise, there's also things I'm glad I did without knowing how important they were, but I only know that in hindsight. I intend to tell you 3 of each so you can know with foresight what I learned in hindsight. Welcome to Looking Back with... This first point is so commonly known that if this is the first time you're hearing about it, then congrats, you aren't terminally online. Or you're probably just on the wrong side of the online. I digress. Perfectionism. I am glad that going into creating manga, I knew not to indulge in perfectionism. The Saints was specifically designed for me to improve my manga making skills, so there really was no expectation for me to be perfect. This is the only tip in this video that you've probably heard before. I specifically compiled tips that I haven't seen on the internet because I wanted to see what I could add to the conversation. But the reason this tip made my list is because I needed to emphasize its importance. If there is one thing you take from this video, it is to not expect your first few manga projects to be perfect. Until you are getting paid, your goal is to not be perfect or to chase perfection, but to improve. No matter how small, progress is progress. Perfectionism will make you miss the forest for the trees. You'll miss honest progression for the illusion of perfection. Like and subscribe. In my second chapter, there's an inconsistency that no one has paid attention to. There's also one in my first chapter, but I won't beat myself up about it either because the important thing is it was a human error and not a plot hole. But also, I was more careful about it on chapter 5. Perfectionism will drain you and kill your spirit and steal the joy you gain from being an artist. Before you do anything meaningful with your art, so don't bother being perfect, blood. To balance the first thing I'm glad I knew, this is the first thing I wish I knew. Confidence. If you read the Saints, you'll notice that the first 3 chapters aren't inked. The reason is pretty dumb. I was not confident enough to ink. I know. Sounds like I was being a perfectionist. Well, to that I say close. The thing is, I wasn't confident about a lot of things. I didn't want to overinvest and set up any significant plot threads. You can tell I went all in chapter 5, and that's because I said fuck and decided to start having fun with it. This lack of confidence though came as a byproduct of the second thing I'm glad I knew. A sort of downside to the perk of making my manga an episodic kind of manga. See, keeping my manga episodic was perfect because I got to write complete adventures beginning to end. I have a taste of things to come and I am now better prepared to design a whole arc. By writing out 2 episodic storylines, the first taking 2 chapters and the second 3 chapters, I have the experience I need. I know what questions to ask, what parts need to be in place to make a full arc. Maybe even a whole story. But even while being episodic, I learned how to have a sort of overarching plot as well. But above all, the decision to be episodic allowed me to not bite off more than I could chew. Who knows what hell I'd be in if I started a full-on plot-driven story, start to finish. 5 chapters in and I'd still be introducing everything. God knows how much I hate introductions. You can tell my favorite thing to do is to draw fights from what you see in the Saints. You can tell I love the mid-game more than the pre-game. All this to say, if I wouldn't have given up, I'd be hating what I'm drawing. To become a chore. I enjoy coming up with new adventures, new characters, new ways to use the main characters I've created. See, over-investing in a full storyline wouldn't be for me because I'm more invested in characters than plots. More on this on the third thing I'm glad I knew. First, the second thing I wish I knew. Composition. I watched a YouTube video about this and it almost changed my life. I wrote it off thinking I should only consider things like that for a manga cover page or maybe even YouTube thumbnails. For my manga though, I focus on perspective and dynamic action poses and stuff. Read the Saints and you'll see this instantly. My anatomy is always on point. My proportions between characters and whatnot. And then I read Prison School. Prison School changed my life. I've never been so repulsed and somehow intrigued. The way the artist showed Andre's descent into madness by gradually turning him into a monster visually, drawing him more and more gigantic, proportionally speaking, everything about him was completely off, like to the point of it being like a plot hole in some cases. And that's what blew my mind. That's what made me understand that the YouTube video I watched can be applied in my manga itself. By drawing Andre off, the scenes visually portrayed how off he was in the head at the points in the story. I wish I knew that manga is a medium that allows me to say due to realism. Always aiming for realism really held me back, but now I am going to be using the full potential of manga as a medium. Now I shall add composition to my tools along with dynamics and perspective. I will change the game and show the full power of Jeet called Grow. And chapter 6 will be perfect for this because this chapter is gonna be me challenging myself to do something I've been avoiding. A chapter without a fight scene. I'm honestly scared. Composition might just be what I need to make this chapter engaging without relying on Dragon Ball tactics that was uncalled for. On to the third thing I'm glad I knew. The importance of characters. I truly believe stories would mean nothing without characters. So I'm glad I focused on practicing how to be creative with characters. And I was even more happy to hear feedback that whatever it is I'm doing with my characters is working. I still have a lot more to learn, obviously, but I at least know how to create a character that's likable. Next is how to make a hateable character. I digress. Portraying certain traits about characters and stuff takes a lot of energy when you have a lot. So now I have to find a way to keep track of who has what habits and who reacts how to what events and so forth. But the first step of fleshing out their motivations and flaws definitely paid off. This is the second thing I want you to take away from this. Even if you are hectically plot driven or deep into world building, it is all going to mean nothing if your characters aren't solid. Before I get to the third thing I wish I knew, I'ma put an honorable mention here. This is an honorable mention because this tip kind of applies to both categories. Patience. I wish I was patient about certain things, and I'm glad I was patient about other things. See, I've been patiently waiting for the perfect time to explain my power system because I put so much time into it and I love it and blah blah blah. But after rewatching Ben 10, I realized I can keep the power system to myself and just keep applying it to my fights, The only thing I'll ever explain are things my characters don't know yet and end up learning. Other than that, I'd rather readers make YouTube videos and theories about what is going on with my power system until I eventually throw someone's backstory that might prove them all right or wrong. That sounds more fun. Also, since I'm making an episodic manga, explaining the power system in one chapter would be dumb if I don't explain it everywhere like Avatar The Last Airbender did. You should be able to open at any point in time and know that it's a story about bounty hunters and they're in some sort of fantasy setting. Yeah, and I'm not gonna keep re-explaining this power system. I mean, it's pretty complex. It makes more sense to explain certain people's abilities and let my fight explain other more obvious abilities. So that people who do read multiple chapters can still put all the pieces together about what's this, what that, and etc. etc. My patience allowed me to come to this way better conclusion. So yeah, patience paid off. And I wish I was patient about naming some of the fighting moves. I am not happy with one of the moves names, but now I have to stick with it. Naming is hard, so I guess I would have had to be patient forever, so I can let that one go. But the point is, it's good to be patient. I don't know. I think what I need to figure out is timing. What needs to be studied is the timing of certain things. The third thing I wish I knew before starting my manga is how to apply everything I've been learning while making YouTube videos. I never have it in mind to apply these lessons. I'm always telling myself, now is not the time, I'll apply it later. Not a good mindset to have. It's like I'm ready to move on to grade 2 since I have the required 50% to pass, but I want to first get 100% before I move to grade 2, not knowing that going to grade 2 will raise all my grade 1 knowledge to 100% as a side effect. I hope that made sense. The point is, I could be learning more if the mindset to apply everything I'm learning stayed with me. I'm just so focused on the pages that I missed the chapter, and I'm missing the forest for the trees. But we will see if I can focus on this in this coming 6th chapter. Stay tuned, brethren, and watch this video if you want to know what I learned from drawing the first 2 chapters of this manga. I'm actually going to rewatch it as well and see if I've changed, if I know anything else, if things went well. And subscribe to my Patreon to support my channel and my manga career.